Hi everyone, it's Mike here. Today's project I filmed over a 2-day period over one of the hottest weekends of the year so far. When I actually sat down to review all the footage, when I'd got it all from the cameras onto my computer, ready to edit, I found that it was over an hour and 45 in length. So once I'd cut all of the boring drying time and the repetitive actions out, the whole thing was still around about an hour and a half. Now once that's all edited with music and all that kind of stuff put in, and these bits at the beginning and a little bit at the end, it would have been far too long to try and upload a film of that length and of that file size. The last video that I uploaded, which was 39 minutes, took just over 12 hours. So this one would have taken almost a full day to upload at my current internet speeds. So it's just not feasible for me to do that, which I do apologise for. So instead of watching it in real time, I have had to speed it up to get it to a manageable length. Now currently it's looking at around about 25 minutes. I still haven't added in this piece of footage that I'm recording now, or my goodbye bits, including my little slides at the beginning and the end. So it looks like it's going to be around about 25 minutes. So the reason I'm telling you this is because some parts of the film you'll see me waving my hands around. That's because I'm talking while I'm doing the project. So although you won't hear what I'm saying because it's sped up, I will try and narrate over the top what I was trying to convey at that point, because I can still remember it pretty clearly. So without further ado, let's get started and I'll show you what I created. So I'm starting out with an 8x8 inch flat canvas panel that I purchased from Indigo Blue and some scrap corrugated cardboard that I've cut into different sized widths and strips, and some I've even peeled the paper off to reveal the corrugation in between. And using the super thick Slap It On, or the super thick gloss gel medium from Indigo Blue, I'm going to just paint the glue onto the back of the items and onto the canvas, and then stick these down in a kind of grid-like pattern. Now I have already placed them out on my worktop, so I know exactly where I want to put everything, and I've created a kind of plan before I started. But as most plans go, things do change slightly as you're actually creating, so I'm not too worried the fact that it's not perfect. It's not exactly the way that I'd laid it out originally, but that's what happens. You always have to do things on the fly. As I said earlier, I'm using this super thick gloss gel medium. You could use any glue that you want to. Now I'm sure that using something like Mod Podge or the Collage Page from Aleen's would do exactly the same trick, or even just bog standard PVA craft glue would do the trick. So because it was so warm when I filmed this, as soon as I put the glue on the back, some of the pieces of cardboard started to curl. So you'll see me just put some small pots of paint on top of it just to hold it down while the glue grabs. So as you can see, I'm building up the layers, I did all my verticals first, and now I'm adding my horizontals and building up bridges and just trying to create a kind of grid-like texture and pattern that looks a little bit industrial. Now that the first layer is down, I can start bringing in some embellishments. These are some cogs and gears from my collection. Some of these have been cut from grunge board using the Tim Holtz and Sizzix cogs and gears die. Others are just pieces of MDF that have been sent to me in either Happy Mail or I've purchased over the last few months or year or so, and I'm just gluing and sticking those down using the same gloss gel medium as we go. So you'll also see me removing some of that gloss gel medium where it's squidged out from underneath when I've pressed them down. So doing it before it sets, just using a small detail brush just to remove any excess, because once it dries you'll still see it once it's painted because there'll be a lump there, but if it's removed then you won't, obviously. I'm just going to give it a quick blast with the heat gun just to help it along the drying process. It'll grab the pieces so that they will be stable enough for me to continue adding extra bits on. It won't be dry completely, but it'll be dry enough for me to not have the fear of knocking anything off. So as you can see, I'm gluing on some more embellishments. So I have a heart-shaped button, I have a key laser cut from MDF or LDF, and some little birds that I also want to add in there as a little bit of detail, so they look like little perched birdies on my structure. Carrying on with that industrial theme, I also have some very small, tiny little brass hinges that I want to include into the texture of the canvas as well. So this little butterfly hinge decided to give me a little bit of trouble, so in the end I had to add extra gloss gel medium underneath it to fill the cavity of the corrugation before it would lay flat. I'm going to pop the canvas to one side and let that dry on its own for a while I work on the next element. This was a piece of grunge board that I drew the shape of a feather, and I've shown you just how I created those holes in there just to make it look as though it's got a bit more detail to the feather. And the line down the middle, I used some Ranger liquid pearls and just drew a line down the middle to give it the feather a bit more detail. I'm going to bring the feather in, I'm going to lay it on the canvas where I want it to go, and then where I know the points are going to be where it's going to rest, that's where I'm going to add the gel medium. So I know that it's going to go on those 3 sections of corrugated cardboard, so that's where I'm adding the gel medium, and then I can just drop it down where it's going to touch. And then just to give it a bit of a helping hand, I'm just going to give it a quick blast just to help it set a little. So I've now dragged out some more bits and pieces from my mixed media drawer. I have some little resin flowers that I also want to stick onto the canvas. So I'm just cleaning off my brush, adding some gel medium where I want to place the flowers, and then just dropping them on. You'll also see me clear off some more of the excess of that gel medium once I've put the flowers down. Obviously some of the gel medium will have squidged out from underneath, so I'm just removing that excess off before it sets. Next, I'm going to add some beads that I found in my collection that I'd completely forgotten that I had. So I thought these would add some extra texture into the background. So I'm just laying down some of that gloss gel medium and then dropping the beads into it. Obviously, the beads will sit in the gel medium, and then when they're dry, they'll be held securely. Of course, I have discovered that I only have the one size bead, so I'm now going to have to go off and buy lots of different sized beads to create different effects on mixed media canvases like this one. So I'm going to buy about 3 or 4 different sizes, I think, so I've got a nice variety of sizes to work with on canvases in future. As you can see, I'm just working my way around the canvas, trying not to get my head in shot. I've placed most of the beads in the cavities in the lower areas of the canvas, but just 1 or 2 spots I'm going to put some on the raised areas too, just to give it a little bit more depth and dimension. When I'm happy with all the positioning, I'm just going to clear off again that excess gel medium from the canvas and then give it a bit of a helping hand with that heat gun to dry. Next, I decided I was going to add some texture using some modelling paste. This is the fine modelling paste from Indigo Blue and the Weird Science stencil, again from Indigo Blue. And I just want to add a little bit of texture into the background. Now, I'm not particularly bothered about getting this perfect. All I want is just some texture in the areas where there isn't anything at the moment. And where I can't get the stencil in, I'm just going to use the tip of my spatula and add some of that texture into the background just to give it a little bit more extra interest, and also add a little bit just on some of those corrugated cardboard pieces just to make them look a bit more weathered and a bit more distressed. So when I'm happy with the amount of texture paste that's on there and all over my fingers too, I'm going to put it to one side and leave it to dry overnight. It's now the next day and everything is perfectly dry. I'm going to add my first layer of colour, which is this Steam Whistle grey paint, and I have the Burning Bonfire orange paint, again all from Indigo Blue. Now what I'm trying to explain here, I've got two brushes. I'm going to lay down the grey paint over everything. While it's still wet, I'm going to introduce some of those orange tones into the grey too. So I'm going to mix and blend the two colours together as I'm applying them all over the canvas. So there will be grey all over the canvas, but there will be patches of the orange going in there too. I'm trying to build up a kind of weathered and distressed, almost rusty look on the canvas. As you can see, I'm trying my hardest to get that grey paint into all of the nooks and crannies that I possibly can. I will switch over at some point to a smaller brush to try and get into all the tight little corners to make sure I've got as much of that grey paint in there as I possibly can. Some of you may be wondering why I've not covered the entire canvas with gesso to start off with. Well, this is acrylic paint, which basically means that once I've got the first coat on and once it's dry, it will give me enough tooth to be able to add in all the other layers. I don't really need to add any gesso and add any more texture to it because there's plenty in there already. But I'm going to be adding more than one coat, so I know that regardless of what colour I put on there, it will cover completely, so there's no need to add any gesso first of all. So when I'm happy with that first layer of colour, then I'm going to bring out the heat gun, just give it a gentle warming just to make sure that everything's all nice and dry before moving on. Now the canvas is dry, you can see it's dried a lot lighter and that orange paint has died down quite a bit. So I'm now going to go over and sort of do a bit of dry brushing over the top, but actually it's not quite dry brushing. It's actually more wet brushing than anything else. I'm just trying to cover all the texture and add a lot more of the orange paint over the top of the grey. The grey will remain in the background, but I want the orange to be brought more into the foreground. And the more orange that I add, the rustier it becomes. So this did take me quite some time, so I'm just going to jump the video forward to where I'm almost finished adding the orange. Of course, before moving on, I need it to be completely dry, so out comes the heat gun, give it a once over, and then we can move on. I'm then going to pop the canvas to one side to work on the next element. So this is just a standard paper plate. I have some Snow White metallic white acrylic paint, and using a spatula I'm just going to grab a dollop of the paint and put it onto the paper plate. I'm then going to grab a pot of lawn green luscious metallic mica pigment powder, and I'm going to mix a generous portion of that powder in with the white metallic paint. And it doesn't matter too much if all of the mica doesn't absorb into the white paint, because all it's going to do is give you a little bit more texture when you use this paint on the project. Next, I'm going to grab some teal of luscious pigment powder, and I'm going to add that into the paint too. So mixing the blue with the green and the white is going to give me a very light turquoisey colour, which I'm hoping is going to be almost identical to the plate colour. So that's going to give me a really nice kind of copper oxide patinated, almost verdigris green colour. That's the hope anyway. So I'm happy with that mixed colour, so before I do anything else I'm going to make sure that I put all the lids back on all of my pots, because I do have a tendency to knock things over, and the last thing I want to do is to knock a pot of teal pigment powder all over my carpet. And trust me, it doesn't vacuum up very easy. So what you can see me doing here is just using some of the water from my spritz bottle just to clean off my brush, because I decided that the water in my pot where I normally clean our brushes was far too dirty to use. So back comes the canvas, and it's now time to start dry brushing on our verdigris patina effect over all of the canvas. So trying very hard just to keep that patina effect on the raised sections of the canvas. Obviously I need it on the feather, and I need it on all of the upper raised areas, and obviously where you've got the corrugated cardboard I'm going to try and just get it over the tops and not get any of that powder or of the paint into the crevices, so that colour of that orange and grey will remain in the background of the canvas throughout. At one point while I was doing this, I did think to myself, I wonder what the canvas would have looked like if I'd have actually started with the green patina all over the canvas and then dry brushed the rust effect over the top of that. Would it have made it look more authentic doing it that way around rather than doing it the way around that I've done it here, with the rust first and then the patina over the top? Perhaps I should have done the patina first and then the rust over the top. Who knows? I may try and do another project where I do it in that order to see what the difference would be and which looks more authentic. So it's about here that I decided that I think I've got enough of that patina and enough of that dry brushed metallic effect over the top. So I will lift it up to show the camera, so I'll tilt it so you can see it. There you go. And you can see that shine from that metallic paint. So just give it a quick blast with the heat gun to make sure it's all nice and dry, and then we can start to add our title piece, or our little piece of text that we're going to add to the canvas to finish it off. So I'm going to add my canvas title using my Dymo letter tag label maker. So I'm just going to type out the little phrase that I want to use, print it out, and then grab a pair of scissors and trim off the excess paper from around the word block. And because this has a self-adhesive backing, all I have to do is to peel that off and then it's ready for me to just stick straight down onto my canvas. Now I will probably go back later and add a little coating of sealant over the top just to make sure that it's never going to peel off. So just to finish off, I'm going to grab my Rusty Hinge distress marker and I'm just going to add a little bit of grunge around the edges of the word block. And then I'm going to call this project complete. So even though that video had been sped up, I do hope you still enjoyed watching the creation process from start to finish. If you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up, share the video with all your friends, and if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel already, you can do so by clicking the button at the end of this video to get notified of more videos just like this one from me. That's all from me for now. I will see you all again real soon. Bye for now.